And you're very welcome to another edition of the GreenZone Updates from Jerusalem, Conversations with Eugene Doyle. I'm delighted that you can join us this evening, and especially our viewers joining us across Ireland and from around the world. Every week on the GreenZone, we try to move beyond the headlines and examine the wider geopolitical picture surrounding Israel and the Middle East. Tonight, we're asking what one is to believe is one of the defining questions facing Israel today. Israel has survived wars, terrorism, missile attacks, and repeated attempts to destroy the Jewish state since 1948. And despite all of that, it has become one of the world's leading economies, a center for innovation, and one of the strongest military powers in the region. Yet, does strength automatically bring security? This week, we've witnessed events that appear at first glance almost contradictory. A landmark agreement between the United States, Israel, and Lebanon aimed at dismantling Hezbollah. American airstrikes against Iranian targets after targets in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the announcement of direct talks between CENTCOM and Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Meanwhile, Europe is questioning its relationship with Israel, while Turkey's rhetoric over Jerusalem continues to escalate. So, what should ordinary Israelis make of all of this? Should they feel reassured by America's actions? Should they remain deeply skeptical? Or have decades of experience taught Israelis that today's diplomatic breakthrough can quickly become tomorrow's security crisis? Joining me once again is my regular panelist and fellow Irishman, producer of the GreenZone, and someone who experiences these events firsthand every day from Jerusalem, Marco Alexander. Marco, it's great to have you.
Gio good.
Dias Miragwich.
Konasatatu.
Tommy Gohanawa Erfod. Now, we're also joined by Anjuli Pandavar, originally from South Africa and formerly of the Islam religion, and a staunch defender of Israel, but also a critic of Israel when it's required. A very great welcome to you, Anjuli.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we begin, if you're enjoying these discussions, please subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Every subscription, every comment, and every share helps us reach a wider audience and continue bringing thoughtful conversations about Israel and the Middle East every week. Now, one thing we're going to start doing every week from this week on is because our audience is mainly is aimed at Irish people, and Irish people are being fed a line from the president's office right down to the Taoiseach's office, right down the line, and to nearly every party in the Dáil that about this two-state solution, that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, and that there can only be two states, and that Israel is preventing them and taking over their land and stuff like that. Now, we're going to play you a piece of, every week, we're going to play you a piece of fact, not fiction. This isn't made up by AI, and it's not made up by Israelis. It's not made up by the Mossad. This is real video taken. And this one is from 1971. Yasser Arafat was interviewed, and I can't think of her right name at the moment. I let her do the introduction, but it has an interview with Yasser Arafat in 1971 and a State Department document in 1961 and another person, the PLO, in 1976. Take a look at this.
We did a very important thing. We create a new people. And instead of being refugees, to be fighters. This is very important. We were refugees, homeless. We became now fighters, freedom fighters.
That is Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, and he admits it here openly in his own voice. They created a new people, not an old nation, not a nation that lived here for thousands of years, but a nation they just invented. It's a political invention made only to fight Israel, to fight the Jews, and to stop them from having a state. He admitted that himself. Now, this connects us directly to an official 1961 US State Department document. Quote, at Arab League meeting at Shtauri last August, decision was made to establish Palestine personality or entity with implication of Algerian-type movement, designed ultimately to eliminate Israel. End quote. Did you hear that? An official document shows that the Arab League made an artificial entity by a political decision for one single goal, to eliminate Israel. This history also links perfectly to what Zohar Mohsen, the head of the PLO Military Operations Department, openly said in an interview with the Dutch newspaper Trouw in 1977. The Palestinian people do not exist. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for our Arab unity. Only for political and tactical reasons do we speak today about the existence of a Palestinian people, since Arab national interests demand that we posit the existence of a distinct Palestinian people to oppose Zionism. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity exists only for tactical reasons. Then he talks about refugees who became freedom fighters. No, they didn't become freedom fighters. They became terrorists, killing civilians, hijacking planes, killing athletes at the Olympics, and suicide bombings is not freedom fighting, it's terror. And then he mentioned something about homeless refugees. Homeless? Really? I mean, by 1971, there were already 18 independent Arab states. Why didn't these Arab refugees get citizenship in Egypt,
Jordan, Syria, or Lebanon?
Oh, I know. I'll tell you why. Because they were intentionally kept in camps to be a weapon against Israel. And the funniest part, Arafat was actually born in Egypt. He forged his birth certificate with the KGB to invent a history for himself. This admission by Arafat, combined with these official historical documents, tell the entire story. The Palestinian identity is not real, no matter how much they try to lie about it, and they lie about it a lot. It's a project made with one goal: to fight the right of the Jewish people to have a state of their own in their ancestral homeland, Israel. Once you call them by that name, which they count on, you delete Israel and you delete the Jews. So I'm here to ask you something. Do you want to help me change the narrative? If so, share this video and stop calling them Palestinians, because that's the root of the problem.
Well, there you are now, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring you one truth every week on this podcast when we're talking anything to do with the Middle East or Israel. We're going to bring you a truth, and that interview with Yasser Arafat is a true interview with Yasser Arafat, is it, Marco?
It is one of many which generally is concealed from Western English-speaking and non-Arabic-speaking audiences. And there you see it, you hear it rather. You hear it, it comes straight from the camel's mouth, put it that way. It of course emphasizes what we've been saying throughout the course of our podcast. And Julie, you've been here and you've been emphasizing these things as well. And indeed, it fits into what we're going to discuss this evening as well with regard to Lebanon, because the PLO and the Palestinist organizations were an agent for the destruction of one of the most successful states in the Middle East, which is Lebanon. Okay. Unfortunately, to a great extent, they brought the disaster upon themselves. They admitted them into Lebanon, and they destroyed the Christian communities in Lebanon. But before we start, she highlights very well what we've been saying all along. Language is very important. I never use the word Palestinian. It doesn't exist as a nation state. I use Palestinism to describe, to define the ideology and Palestinist. And I think we really need to highlight this point and keep on banging on about it.
And just say good evening to Otta. You're very welcome as usual, Otta. Thank you for joining us, and great to have you along. And if you hear anything you want to send in a comment to us or anything, surely do, and we'll get to it. As well as that, also Henrietta, you're very welcome to the program. She says, "Ooh, wonderful! We see our guest is Dr. Pandavar tonight. Very excited." Well, now there you are, and Julie. I don't know what to say to you.
I'm green with envy.
Yeah.
Green with envy.
She's Henrietta says nothing about Marco or me, but you and Julia. Oh my God!
Absolutely.
No.
That's the last time we're having Aunt Julia on.
Yeah. You have to stop that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay. We're seeing lots of contradictory stuff going on here at the moment. Let's talk about the US Israel Lebanon framework, because that is new. No matter what we think about or how skeptical we might be, that is new, is it not, Aunt Julie?
Well, I think we need to take a little step back, and that is that there are different audiences here, and I'm coming to this point that you just raised, but I need to take a step back. That's
okay.
When we say what does all of this mean to Israelis, for example, what we are missing is that there are at least two very major, very significant camps in Israel for whom these events have totally different meaning. And there's a group that during the war earned the name Kaplanistas. It's basically the destructive left of Israel. And they live to see the end of Netanyahu, nothing else. And so the events in Iran, even if they put Israel in complete peril, that is secondary to getting rid of the prime minister. So it's very large segments of the press, many politicians, academics, social, civic society organizations, NGOs, who exist for nothing else but to destroy their prime minister, war or no war. So now you might think the war is quieting down quite a bit, and they can let the prime minister get on with his job. No, now they double down. They really want to get rid of this man. So their response, and that's a significant and very vocal component of Israeli society, their response to all the confusion now about Iran and deals and MOUs, etc., the way they absorb that is very different to the way other people in Israel might absorb that and respond to that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is on the American side. Americans in general, I have no fear of contradiction in saying this, Americans in general and American governments have immense difficulty in conceptualizing people who are not like them. And their way of getting around the world is to negotiate and arrive at a position where both sides are happy and off we go, and it's win-win. That's how the world works in their conception. It is inconceivable to them that an entity such as the Islamic Republic of Iran has no interest whatsoever in negotiating to a position where we both are happy with some arrangement. First of all, for the Iranian regime to negotiate with anybody is deeply, deeply offensive. To negotiate with anybody is to put yourself on a level with them and negotiate across the table as equals. But the people that they are supposedly meant to be negotiating with are infidels, kuffar.
But
They are not.
whoa, for a sec. Hold on a second. How can I'm an ordinary individual? I'm an ordinary Joe Soap. You're an ordinary Joe Soap. And Marco's an ordinary Joe Soap. How come we can see that and they can't?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know why they cannot see it. And if you tell them that, sorry, Marco?
No, go ahead. No, so if I may just interject for one
so many people, so many people have pointed out to them over decades that they've got this wrong, especially in the Middle East, especially with Muslims. They have got this wrong. They've also got it wrong with Russians. They've also got it wrong with Chinese. But let's leave that aside, right? They cannot be moved from the position that everybody in the world is out to get the best deal in negotiations. That's what the world is about, okay? So you see this folly. The IRGC is going to what? Is going to meet the US government. What?
Okay.
I didn't see the news, but tell me what they said.
Okay, I want to come back to that. In a moment. I just want to stick with 2 points here, and I want to raise one with Marco. I know you want to come in, Marco, about that. But
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Is there something psychotic in the Israeli psyche that would, as Julie said, be more interested in bringing down a prime minister such as Netanyahu, no other prime minister, just him, bring him down at the risk of all the security for the state of Israel, that there is people in the country who would concentrate on that rather than the security.
Right.
I know such people personally.
Right.
There are many of them.
Let's tackle that question. Now, the people to whom Anne Julie correctly refers are the Kaplanists, as we call them here in Israel. Now, these people are a minority. They're a noisy minority with a disproportionate amount of power.
What is a Kaplan?
The Kaplanists are the people who conducted the protests about the judicial reform and threw the country into mayhem. Now, they in no way, shape, or form constitute a majority, but they are a powerful element within society because they are a confluence of the judiciary, the media, academia, bolstered by foreign NGOs with the interference of foreign governments, namely the former Biden administration, the EU, and others. Okay, so they do not represent the majority. They are, however, a very dangerous element. A lot of them, some of the people who've gone on the demonstrations were very naive, but the people who manipulate them are pernicious, and they are indeed a very dangerous element. Now, this is not the first instance we have of this. We had similar instances during the period of the First Lebanon War in 1982, where the so-called peace camp wrought havoc as well. Okay, so this isn't the first time it happens. They are, generally speaking, the same group of people, okay? Now, what has happened in recent years, in the past 40 years, since the first Menachem Begin government, is that the center of gravity of Israeli politics has moved distinctly to the right or center right. And this is something that the capitalists cannot stomach. So they marshal all the various institutions basically to disenfranchise a significant part of the population. Bear in mind that we don't just deal with this, we also have what I define as an oblique alliance with the enemies in the PA, because of course the Oslo Accords were done with elements in the PA, and of course a whole series of interests have built up in the meantime, also to the detriment of the Arab population in Judea and Samaria as well, because our enemies don't love the Arabs of Judea and Samaria. Far from it. They hate the Jews more than they love them. This is they have no interest in their material, spiritual, economic progress. No interest at all. The thrust is we want to get at the notion of a Jewish state, which doesn't chime with the notion of their notion of something which runs contrary to the nation state. Israel represents everything which they're against, which they're opposed to. Look at the EU, where it in fact dissolves nationalities. Okay, Israel runs against that. Okay.
Okay. And go ahead, Anjuli. Yeah.
Oh, just to quickly
Sure.
add, the Kaplanistas earned that appellation on account of them congregating on Kaplan Street in Tel Aviv Saturday nights after Shabbat, and then just causing mayhem, basically taking over the place. There's a correlation there. The fact that they gathered on Kaplan Street on Saturday nights is what prompted Hamas to release their horror videos on Saturday evenings, and so that, or on Saturdays, so that it fires up that demonstration on Saturday night, calling for an end to the war.
And are these people aligned with any particular party in Israel?
All the left-wing parties are that's in some ways connected with them. The more left, the more connected. But there was a campaign throughout, well, from very early on in the war with Hamas, called "Bring Them Home," and I'm sure we all heard about this. This whole emblazoned across big buildings, "Bring them home." Well, there's very strong evidence that was an IRGC operation.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's how sick the whole thing is.
Okay. That's really weird. Okay, let me just move back to this U.S.-Israel-Lebanon framework agreement. Okay, let's just parse it a bit and just see what comes out of this now, because okay, I'm going to run a scenario by you, and you tell me if I'm anyway right in what I'm saying, because we can never really discover what Trump is at, right? But I'm going to try to, right? So in the memorandum of understanding, one of the things in the memorandum of understanding is that Lebanon would there be no more fighting in Lebanon. That's one of the things there now. And then within days of the memorandum of understanding coming into being, and next thing, there's an announcement that Lebanon, Israel, and the United States have built this framework in Lebanon. And it was a case of, I think I saw one quote, and it was a case of Iran. It's none of your business. This is a state. Lebanon is a state that needs its own identity. Is Trump? Because since all that, you see now the attacks in the Straits of Hormuz. There's now backwards and forwards attacks between ceasefire breaches and all of that. Is Iran really angry at Trump for what's happened with this framework in Lebanon?
Is that for me?
Whoever wants to take it there.
Go ahead. Julie, do you want to take it?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I think they were angry long before. See, I'm not even sure whether anger is the word, but deep offense. I was trying to get to saying earlier on that in their minds, They are somewhere between humans and God.
Okay.
Okay? It is absolutely beneath them to be negotiating with anyone. They tell the world how it's going to be. That's their mentality. Okay? So the president of the most powerful country in the world, so what? Still a kafir. Why should we talk to him? It's beneath us. Okay? And so then when before the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, maybe it was from February, when all the bombings started, the United States bombed Iran, took out all sorts of things. Israel bombed Iran. And it was interesting that both Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff at some point later expressed their amazement that Iran was not coming to the negotiating table despite all this bombing. Now, in that little cameo alone, we see the essence of American incomprehension of how the Middle East works and how the Middle East person's head works. For Iran to have agreed to negotiate would have implied that they wanted peace. That's inconceivable. Why would they want peace with the infidel? That's not even a concept. Okay, and so if you hammer them and hammer them and hammer them and hammer them to the point where they will negotiate, or to the point where they will sit down with you, yeah, in your perception, you now have negotiations beginning. In their perception, they have a different strategic alternative to pursue here to continue the war.
Obfuscation.
Yeah? They are not negotiating. They are continuing the war. And this is what the Americans do not understand. And so the outcome of this, as far as the Americans are concerned, is a deal where this side's going to do that and that side's going to do that. And because it's so fundamental to American culture, they're even prepared to encourage the opposite side to come forward, to start, to come to the table by making concessions. It's the ultimate reversal, the ultimate mirror image of reality.
So should they have bombed?
Sorry, continue.
Should they have bombed them back to the Stone Age?
They should have bombed them out of existence. It's simple as that. There is no way they were going to come to negotiation and give you what you call negotiations. Even what we've had, the memorandum of understanding and whatever deals they've signed, it's meaningless. It is completely meaningless. Now, I'm not oblivious to the pressures on President Trump, the upcoming elections, the state of the economy, the volatility of the political scene in the United States. I'm not oblivious to any of those things. I'm aware of those things and the pressures on President Trump. The only problem I see here is that because they stopped the war in between and gave these breaks and pauses, etc., and didn't go all the way, regardless of whatever the Iranian regime might say, you go all the way until there is no more Iranian regime. Now you can start talking. If you leave anything intact, you will lose, because that's a victory for them.
Okay, Marco, just in relation to, let's just look at Lebanon for a minute now. I think that Aon is genuine. I think he would like to have some kind of agreement with Israel and have his country back as well from the Iranians. He dislikes the Iranians as much as you do. So there's something good in this agreement in this sense, that Israel does not have to move out of its positions until there's verifiable actions that have been agreed in the framework. What do you make? What do you make of Aon, and what do you make of him trying to get out of the clutches of Iran and trying to maybe go and do some kind of a deal with Israel?
Right. No, I think there's a lot of truth to what you said. The Christians in Lebanon have essentially been disenfranchised. Lebanon has been taken away from them. The only Christian country in the Middle East has been snatched from them by this Shiite militia, which up until the recent hammering by the Israeli forces was the dominant element in Lebanese politics, without a shadow of a doubt. They ran the show. Of course, now the Israelis have entered the frame, and of course there is a convergence of interest. Certainly the Christians would rather see the back of these delinquents, without a shadow of a doubt. The problem is, do they have the necessary equipment to deal with that? And in this sense, Israel has to be very wary. I don't think Israel is in a position to repeat the tragic mistake of the year 2000, when Prime Minister Ehud Barak hightailed it out of Lebanon, abandoning our allies, because we need to state all the truth. The South Lebanese Christian army, primarily Christian, were our allies, and they were betrayed. We cannot have another repeat of this scenario. I hear reports from Lebanon. There are many normal, decent people in Lebanon who would like to have good relations with Israel. There's plenty of potential there. The problem is the Shiite minority, which is a somewhat volatile minority.
That's an understatement. But from what I've learned in the last few weeks, the Shiite population, civilian population, has been expelled from the south. I hope that's true, and I hope that it is as thoroughgoing to expelled all the way to the north of the Litani, preferably even further north than that, because that's the nectar of Hezbollah. To begin with, like in the two Lebanon wars before, right? There was agreements made with the Lebanese government concerning Hezbollah, as if the Lebanese government spoke for Hezbollah, whereas it is Hezbollah who ran the country, and the Lebanese government was answerable to Hezbollah. And so any agreement that was made with the Lebanese government was not an agreement that Hezbollah was even formally bound by. But apart from that, of course, Hezbollah is not going to go into agreement with anybody, especially when it involves their diminution. Okay, so what I see now is an agreement between Misha Ayoun and the Israeli government, and this is a positive thing. And the reason I say it's a positive thing is because it's freaking out Hezbollah. They don't have the clout in Lebanon that they used to, and now the government that used to be their puppet is making agreements with the enemy. Or the government that they had leverage over is making agreements with the enemy. At the same time, I've just learned today something about Christians in Lebanon that I didn't know from before, is that they are incredibly fickle, unreliable, untrustworthy, duplicitous, etc. Now, this is just what I heard from a highly authoritative Israeli colleague. So as far as I see, the real problem here is actually the Americans, because the Israelis, if they had the means, they would completely destroy Hezbollah. At this point, I mean, they wouldn't have done it before October 7th, but after October 7th, they're more than ready to completely eradicate that scourge. And of course, if this unsettles, if this makes the Iranians upset, it's going to make President Trump upset, because he firmly believes he has some kind of deal to protect here. And so that forces Israel to tread carefully, to tread easily as far as Hezbollah is concerned. And Hezbollah is freaking out because it cannot stop the Lebanese government from proceeding with its negotiations and discussions with Israel. And so, yeah,
but
that's how I see it.
Okay, can Hezbollah be disarmed by Lebanon with the help of the US, Marco?
No, I don't think the US would want to do that. I don't think the US would want to get involved there. They've lost too much before, and it's a can of worms. They don't want to get involved.
No, but as a part of the framework, allows for this is that not that they will go in on the ground, not that, but they will assist the Lebanese army in being able to be competent enough to disarm them. I think that's part of the framework. I'm not sure, Marco. What do you? Yeah,
please,
Marco. What do you see that there is the fact that Israel don't have to pull back without verifiable what do you call it, results on the ground, that if with US help, could they disarm Hezbollah?
Israel could do it without the US help. What is required is non-hindrance by the USA. This is the problem. Unfortunately, Israel, during the course of the past few decades, has become too reliant. Of course, now we see a process of weaning Israel off American aid and essentially speaking, subsidizing America's military industry. Well, truth be told, I think America gets a very good deal, and I think we should be emphasizing this. I think Israel gets a worse deal, to be honest, and it's not appreciated as much as it should be. Could Israel do it? Yes, certainly from the point of view of a kinetic war, it could raise the country to the ground if it wanted to. Of course, that is not an issue.
I know
it's the geopolitical considerations.
Let's deal with reality, Marco.
Yeah.
Let's deal with reality. The reality is the Americans are not going to allow the Israelis to do that. So what I'm saying to you is there a way of disarming Hezbollah under this framework?
Well, I don't know whether we have to always wait for the Americans to give the green light at a certain point.
I don't believe it could either.
I'm not one of those who believe that it is wise to wait for the Americans or to accept American dictates. I think this is a very foolish position. Could Israel do it? Yes, it could, but there are many situations, there are many things to take into consideration, of course. Israel has to keep a lot of its powder dry. The Lebanese front is not the only front. We have the Egyptians in the south who are chomping at the bit. We have the gentleman in the north, the sponsor of genocides, Mr. Erdogan, in the north, because we have to bear in mind that he sponsors the Islamist lunatics in Syria. So Israel has a lot of elements to contend with. Then, of course, we have the situation in Iran, of course, and Iran to a great extent is the key. The Americans in recent weeks, as we know, have been pussyfooting because, as Anjuli correctly explained, they project their mentality onto conflicts and they don't realize that the Iranian regime is basically a Nazi regime on steroids in many ways. for the Iranians, this is what gives them meaning. Not the Iranians, of course, the Islamist Khomeini's regime. Their scope in life is to destroy Israel, and they don't want to be deprived of that. That is what they live for. Of course, Israel is the first step, then they go beyond. But this is their whole raison d'etre. That's why we can't really speak. We cannot speak of any peace or any serious agreement as we would speak about in a European context. So with regard to the Israeli position, Israel has to keep its eyes open on many fronts, wean itself off American aid. And thankfully, President Trump has been good in this sense. For all his shortcomings, he has assisted Israel. He has given a breather, but Israel has to take advantage of that now. It has to get back to some basics, not rely on the market to solve every problem. You cannot think in simple, because of course the great mistake in Israel in recent decades was to believe that the market would resolve every problem. You need your own military industry to avoid being blackmailed, as was the case during the Gaza war. And so to answer your question, is it possible? Yes. Is it wise? Israel has to be a little bit careful, because it faces threats on many fronts, on multiple fronts. No other country in the world in the history of humankind has faced so many threats. If we were to look at them now, Turkey in the north, Egypt in the south, Jordan, the moderate Hashemite regime to the east, the Iranian regime, of course. Then we have the EU, which is a pernicious force, which behind the scenes is financing and providing justification for attacks on Israel. The United Nations, of course, is another element which Israel has to contend with. It should have withdrawn from the United Nations many decades ago, but in the meantime, it's still there. So Israel is playing on many different fields at the moment. So it has to keep its powder dry and direct its energies in a judicious manner.
Now, I wouldn't question democracy, but is democracy questionable in this case? When you have an American president who is there for how many years? The president there 4 years, is it? 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years, and halfway through that term, which is coming in November, he or she has to keep an eye on those elections to make sure he or she doesn't lose control of either house or both houses or whatever it is. And you have Benjamin Netanyahu, who, in my opinion, will probably go down as one of the best leaders of Israel ever.
Not just Israel, Eugene. I believe he will go down as the greatest statesman of the past 150 years. And I do have criticisms of him, but I cannot imagine any leader in the world having the ability to manage this situation with all his faults, and he has faults. Go ahead.
Yeah, but with democracy, when you see what we have to play with here, so we could have a lunatic. We could have a lunatic taken over prime minister in Israel in October. We could have.
Yes, technically possible. Yes,
yeah, possible, right? So you have a prime minister there now who is strong on defense of Israel and strong on meeting the challenges before they happen, and that could be whisked away in a matter of weeks with elections. Whereas you're dealing with government, you're dealing with the likes of Iran, Lebanon, where there's no such thing as elections, and especially in Iran, they're there for forever. That's an unlevel playing pitch, and how do you deal with that? With those,
that's a very interesting question, Eugene. We have actually the precedent for that. Of course, the Oslo Accords were foisted upon the Israeli people before, so certainly there are deficiencies in democracy. My position is that before being a democracy, Israel is a Jewish state. democracy to a certain extent is secondary, as indeed should be the case for all healthy nations. That is my position. That is a philosophical position. The practicalities in the short term are different, but certainly democracies, as we understand them now, are to a great extent short-circuiting. They're short-circuiting for in Europe, and I'm just going off slightly on a tangent, because citizenship has been conceded to people who have no real emotional stake in the states that have granted them citizenship, and this is a real problem.
Okay, and Julie, I'll give you the last word on this segment, and then we'll move on to
Okay. Okay, I think, I mean, to keep it on the elevated philosophical level of my colleague here, I think that that democracy, having grown out of the Judeo-Christian tradition in Western Europe, made certain assumptions which were precursors to what we now see in the American conception of the way people are around the world. When democracy was introduced in Western Europe, it was assumed that the kind of citizenry, the kind of social constructs that participated in democracy and assumed their roles within it, that kind of individual, that kind of person exists all over the world and would be ready to embrace democracy if it were offered to them, or they had the opportunity, except that in the vast areas of the world, especially Asia, democracy, the kind of people who lived in that part of the world were not people suited to this social experiment that the West was introducing. It worked after a fashion where there had been long colonial control, such as in India. But societies that were extremely hierarchical, that had subordination and dependence built into their structure, where the way you conceive of yourself is as an extension of whoever the one is above you in the social hierarchy. I'm not saying democracy cannot work there, of course. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying the assumption is flawed, and it's just a matter of time where a people emerges for whom their ideology is so structured that democracy is an insult, is an offense. Freedom is an offense. And of course, I'm referring particularly to Muslims and their campaign of imposing Sharia across the whole world through jihad. For them, no, democracy is vile. It's unconscionable. So where am I going with this? There is a flaw built into democracy that as soon as it would come up against a people for whom democracy is an anathema, it would be imperiled.
Okay.
And part of this is contained in the concept of freedom of religion. Within Europe alone, the religions that were trying to deny each other freedom were all Christian, various kinds of Christian religions. And they could find some understanding. So freedom of religion meant freedom of any kind of Christian religion. There were still difficulties for Jews, even in Europe, even after the Enlightenment, even despite Napoleon's efforts. But now we see this problem really come to the fore in the United States, where democracy is sacrosanct and freedoms are sacrosanct and freedom of religion is sacrosanct. So sacrosanct that they cannot recognize that the people whose freedom of religion they insist on protecting for the sake of democracy are precisely the people who will have nothing to do with freedom of religion and use that freedom in order to destroy democracy. Now, the Americans have a dilemma here. How can they deny these people freedom of religion when they claim it for themselves? Except that they cannot see that it isn't freedom of religion that they are giving these people. They're giving these people freedom to destroy them.
Okay. Okay, just last, I want you to both give me a number between 1 and 10. Just a number. I don't want any discussion on this. Just a 1 and 10. So 1 being it won't work, 10 be it will, 10 it will actually work. The Lebanon-Israel Framework Agreement. 1 to 10. Where do you fall, Marco?
About 6.5, I'd say. And that's a lot better than it would have been before the 7th of October. There is something to build on, but Israel has to be very cautious. You see, there are some real problems there. It has to be sorted out. Because essentially speaking, one has to bear in mind that Lebanon as a state has been at war against Israel since its foundation. In 1948, it was one of the states which attacked Israel. It was part of a general alliance. Now, if we were to speak in terms of absolute justice, as an aggressor state and a state that has been defeated, it should make territorial concessions if we're speaking about absolute justice. Now, the next question is whether Israel should pursue absolute justice, and not always it's the case that absolute justice should be pursued, because perhaps it may be possible to enter into a good relationship with certainly, I believe, the Christian element within the population. I believe there may be scope for some interesting agreements. The problem is whether they can shake off the shackles of Hezbollah, and not just Hezbollah, the Shiites, because we also have Amal, which is another pernicious Shiite organization. So there is room for hope in Lebanon, but it should be very cautious. Very cautious. Now, I just before I finish with that, so whereas I might be a little bit flexible on the notion of a slight or a moderate withdrawal from Lebanon, because there might be the possibility of a real arrangement with the Lebanese, I believe the great mistake that was committed in the south was with Egypt, and I believe that should never have happened. Because I believe we're talking about two distinct populations. I don't see the Lebanese Christians as having genocidal intent towards the Jews. The Egyptians, I do. So I draw that distinction, and I highlight the grave mistake that was made by Israel on the southern border.
And we might come back to that in another webinar. Now, I don't know whether, and Julie, I don't know whether you can do this, because Marco clearly wasn't able to do it. Are you able to give me a figure between 1 and 10 without going into the discussion? Because I need to move on to the next space. Marco wasn't able to do it. Marco wasn't able to do it.
I wasn't.
It's the Middle East. How can you expect something like that? Come on, jeez.
Go on. Anyway, give me a number first. Then. Give me a number first.
All right. I would say 4.5.
Oh, okay. My God, Marco, I'm very impressed with you, given 6.5.
The eternal optimist am I.
Absolutely, yeah. And Julie, do you want to say anything about why about your four?
Well, I just think that there are so it is the whole, even the status quo right now is predicated on so many misconceptions and hope and optimism and fingers crossed, and basically we have shown the Iranians an image of a future in which they control the United States. That's what's just been accomplished with this deal.
Okay.
And I fear that being the kind of regime they have, and having just gone through over the last year the experience that they have had. They've got some vengeance they've got some blood to claim. And they will find a way of doing it. Even if only to assert their honor, their status, and to prevent anybody from gaining the impression that they have made an agreement with an infidel.
Okay.
That's not how they want to go down in history, as the top of the Shia made an agreement as equals.
Okay.
With the head of the infidels. That's not going to wash. They have to break the deal. They have to save their face.
And of course, it's foreseen within their worldview. Taqiyya, they can dissemble and deceive.
And lie.
And tell fibs.
Yes. Okay. Before I move on to the next segment, I just want to say, Henrietta, there's no point in you trying to suck up to Marco and me now. I mean, look, you know, you're both the host and you're the show. You know, okay, we understand where we fit.
We got the message.
We got the message, Henrietta. We got that. And now Henrietta does also go on to say something more serious. So actually, my understanding is they are just pleasing the world, USA, to say yes, but back at the ranch, they are and have backup plans and will not bow down to anyone. That's what you're saying, Aunt Julie. That's what Henrietta is agreeing with you on that point. Now, okay, moving to, again, this is another reason why the Israeli population must be scratching their heads, because we're seeing Iran violating the ceasefire with attacks on ships in the Straits of Hormuz, American retaliation, military deterrence. And the question is, why punish Iran militarily while simultaneously open direct military talks between CENTCOM and the IRGC? I mean, that must have caught you all by surprise. Another Trump surprise.
I personally wasn't caught by surprise. I think Trump's cabinet is very inconsistent, and you have contrasting elements within it. You have to bear in mind that he has two real estate dealers who have very close relationships with Qatar. And I saw the interview with Witkoff and Kushner, and their antipathy towards our prime minister was very evident. They wore it on their sleeve. So I have serious misgivings about the involvement of these gentlemen in any aspect of American foreign policy. And I believe that is understatement. That's really stretching understatement. You also have some very good people within the American administration that must be very frustrated at this point in time. As Anjuli said, of course, the projection of the American mentality, cutting deals is not statesmanship. Cutting deals is for real estate agents, for business people. It's not for statesmen.
So negotiating, because I know you won't agree with this, and Julia, and you rightly have given a very reason why they don't negotiate. But is bringing the IRGC into some form of, don't say negotiation, I'm not going to say it, so into some form of conversation, is that essential, or is that a mistake by America and CENTCOM?
Just ask yourself the question, how will Iran see that? How will Iran see the IRGC being invited over to hobnob with Washington? How would they see that? Okay.
They would see it, they would see it as a victory for them.
Absolutely. Just 2 weeks ago, the Americans could have bombed them to hell, to the Stone Age, as the Americans put it. And then a few weeks later, they're talking to them at the highest level as equals. There's an inconsistency in such a behavior that they perceive as weakness and that they would take advantage of. We must not forget that America is awash with Iranian cells of all kinds, including spies and killers. Okay, and so what is the signal here? The IRGC turns up in America. Is that what's actually happening? I haven't seen that news, right? But at what point do the Iranian cells embedded all over the United States get the signal to act? Especially with the IRGC on its back foot, being hammered, and various factions inside the regime trying to gain ascendancy. I think there comes a point where, whether this is the time they may have wished or not, we're going to give the signal, just to throw the whole thing up into the air and see where the chips fall. That's also possible.
And Marco, how should Israelis interpret what's going on here? Because I know you're resilient, and God knows you guys are so resilient. But what should your people make of that development?
Well, we have a similar situation here in Israel, Eugene. We too have sleeper cells all over the country. We have quite a large minority, as you well understand. So Israel has to deal with a similar problem. But at last, it's beginning to happen, because the Oslo mentality and the judicial elite, to a great extent, which conditioned Israeli policy, has to a great extent been discredited. Not enough, but I believe they're more dangerous even than hostile populations within Israel, by the way. That is my view. I believe that they're much more dangerous and they can cause much more havoc. They are indeed the facilitators of havoc. But anyway, there is a growing awareness. For many years, the border with Jordan has been porous. It still hasn't been plugged. These holes still haven't been plugged, but at least there is an awareness. Of course, we know that that there are also tunnels being dug from Judea and Samaria into areas within the Green Line. We do know this. So we're facing a similar problem. Here, the sense of awareness is greater, however. But it is a problem. For many years, I mentioned in conversations many years ago, with people who were sort of skeptical about what I was saying. And I said, listen, the country is a colander. And sadly, this was proven to be the case on October the 7th. But October the 7th was a watershed moment. We're still not where we should be, but we're getting there.
But what can possibly come out of a situation where CENTCOM, which is a military organization, the IRGC is a terrorist group, and in Iran a military group. This is not diplomats that are meeting now. This is military meeting military. What can possibly be the meaning? What can possibly be discussed at that? It makes no sense, or does it?
No. It doesn't make sense
unless they are parceling out the Middle East again. That's possible too.
Expand on that.
This is our influence, and you can have that and do what you like. That's possible too. I'm speaking completely off the top of my head here.
Yes, okay, that's okay.
Makes sense, Anjuli. Makes sense. We've seen what happened with Giuliani in Syria, with President Trump's pronouncements with regard to Erdogan. This is plausible. This is what you say is plausible.
Just expand on it. Talking from the top of your head. That's fine, and Julia, because you make sense no matter where you're talking from.
Just rephrase that, please.
Okay, you talk from the top of your head. Tell us what you're thinking.
Okay. No, I'm striking out in all directions. It's all conjecture, but and I wish I had seen that news or information about it before coming onto the show. I didn't actually know that. I have to confess. Okay, and so this is conjecture. But when militaries meet like that, and it's not to discuss the terms of a surrender, then what else could it be except a division of the spoils?
And here to add one further to it, they're meeting in Qatar.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It gets worse and worse.
Absolutely. It's just
my goodness.
It's just mental stuff. It's mental stuff. It's mental stuff.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, now 3.5.
Okay.
No, but that was the Lebanon thing. Lebanon were.
Let me stay on the Iranian, on the memorandum of understanding for a second. Obama did a deal for the nuclear thing, and we saw where all that went. Now, the only thing that came out of the Obama one, and I know that you said it benefits America more than it benefits Israel, is the 10-year arms supply for agreement with the US. Now, I'm going to throw this out to you and say, what if coming out of the memorandum of understanding in the final deal was that an American base would be located in Israel?
That's nothing to do with Iran. They don't have to discuss that with Iran.
No. I'm saying it for this reason. I'm saying an American base based in Israel is a deterrent, is it not?
There's an American base in Qatar, okay? There's an American base in Bahrain. There are American bases in Saudi Arabia. When you say an American base in Israel would be a deterrent, do you mean a deterrent to Iranian attacks on Israel?
Yes.
No, I can't see that. I can't see that making any difference at all, because
quite the opposite.
Yeah,
I would say it would further constrain Israel. Israel would be very unwise to do that.
Yes.
Israel, of course, wants good relationship. We are fully aware that is where our widest base of support is. But at the moment, the relationship is seriously flawed. And Israel needs to create more room for maneuver.
You know, the 10 years that you mentioned, right? That's what Netanyahu had said. I don't think it's going to be 10 years. I think it's going to be much less than that, simply because everyone is now under pressure. Iran is under pressure. The Muslim Brotherhood is under pressure. Turkey is under pressure. Israel is under pressure. The US is under pressure. There isn't time to amble towards military free hand from the US in 10 years' time. It's going to be a much shorter timeline than that. And I think I'll draw flack for this, but I think Israel has much to learn from Ukraine in how to not be dependent on others, and how to very, very quickly simply change the rules of the game completely, so everybody's catching up with you. I mean, Ukraine has accomplished miracles in the last 4 years, and Israel would do better to swallow whatever pride there might be, if pride is an issue here, and learn from the Ukrainians rather than worry about keep the Americans happy.
But is
That's
it
what I
pride?
think. And then that independence can be achieved in a much shorter time.
But is it pride? Because, okay, is it pride? Because the reason I say that is up to now, I'd imagine, I could be wrong, Marco, you'll correct me if I'm wrong here. I'd imagine that there's companies in Israel chomping at the bit to develop Israel's own weapons so that they're self-sufficient. I'd say they just haven't been able to do it up to now with these agreements in place.
Well, the problem is that they developed a reliance upon the United States. This was the great mistake. They also, the fact that they contracted so-called peace agreements with having the United States as a guarantor, which of course hasn't been particularly useful, especially in the light of the withholding of supplies by the previous Biden administration. So that was a situation that Israel didn't need to get itself into. Israel has the know-how to produce anything, and it has the know-how to acquire the know-how. Of course, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just put a question mark on the word mistake. I'm not at all sure that it was a mistake to develop to sink into dependence on the United States. I think it was a conscious.
Oh yes,
policy.
yes, absolutely. It was a conscious
to emasculate
decision.
Israel, to enfeeble Israel. Especially people like Ehud Barak and that whole cabal.
No, you're absolutely right. I stand corrected. That was what I meant. Essentially speaking, absolutely, to develop this dependence on the United States, of course, and there was, of course, some local interests, some big players here as well, who no doubt were able to line their pockets by developing this dependence. Yes, no.
And do you agree with Anne Julie, Marco, when she says that Israel, it won't take 10 years for them to become, because now they know what they have to do. Your speed of innovation in Israel is just, it's mind-blowing to the rest of the world, maybe. Do you agree with Anne Julie? It won't take 10 years.
Yes, I agree with Anne Julie. But Israel has to get down to some basics. We can't just rely on high tech. It needs the low tech of having its own kinetic explosives, shells, some of the basics as well. And sadly, Israel also abandoned a magnificent project for its own aeroplane, the Lavi project, under American pressure. So we have many examples of foolishness. But Israel also, there's another problem which I believe Israel should speak less and do more. What I dislike about Israeli politics is that they make the big announcements all the time. For example, even when we talk about a new community being set up, a big announcement is made in public view, 10,000 units, and then, of course, it has to go through the bureaucratic process. It should just proceed full speed ahead.
And say less. Now, and just on the where was I going with this? Just on the sorry, no, I'll come back to that. I want to just move to the next segment, and this is around the limits to Israeli resilience. Obviously, since 1948, there isn't a day that Israel is ready to defend itself at all times, right? It's because of wars, because of terrorism, suicide attacks, hostage taking, missile attacks, constant mobilization in Israel. As resilience is part of the national identity there now, isn't it, Marco? Or Anne Julie? Any of you can take it.
Anne Julie, do you want to take it? Or?
Yes, yeah. Well, yes, that's what I see. Especially with this. It's a year since I've last been since I was last in Israel, and I spent a lot of time talking to soldiers. There were a lot of soldiers on the move, and so on railway stations, bus stations, I would just chat to them, just friendly conversation, and also young people of military age who were not in the military at that moment. I'd strike up conversations with them too, and the sense that I get, and it's a sense that I didn't get on previous visits, is that it's a calmness, but it's a strength. It's a calm strength amongst these young people. They're very friendly. They're not freaked out or anything like this, but they know what they're doing. They know where they're going. They know what their country should be, and they know what they're defending. There's no apology. There's no ambiguity or dilemma. Nothing like this. It's been an absolute delight to talk to young IDF soldiers. I wasn't all over the country, but in the bits where I was, and to get that sense. And I'm not the only one who got that sense. Other people, older people, picked up on that as well. People my age, and it was noticeable. It was palpable, and it was appreciated, especially after decades and decades of appeasement and coexistence and conceptia, all that kind of stuff. There's a generation that is now free of all that, and we're seeing real Zionists coming forward again. No compromises. That's what I see.
Okay, Marco.
I very much agree with Anjuli.
The IDF soldiers, the young soldiers, they, in Israel's eyes, are a remarkable bunch of people who really performed when they needed to perform. Because we're looking at the young adults on this side of the world here, born in 2000, and we're saying that in here that they haven't got the same stamina that their parents or the generations before them have, and yet we see something completely different in Israel in how the young IDF came forward and carried out the mission to the nth degree.
And it's not only the military. There are all sorts of social support institutions, if I can put it like that, operating around the country of young teenagers. And I've in Tel Aviv, after a housing block, an old age home, I think, had been bombed. I was in that area. I just went to have a look around there, and a minibus turned up, and maybe two minibuses. And I don't remember what it said on the sides, but outbounded about 20 teenagers, maybe 15, 16 years old, with the same T-shirts, the same clothing, and they were helping the people in these apartments that had been bombed. And I couldn't see from where I was exactly what they were doing, but they were clearly there to support and lend assistance to the people in these places. And so those are the kinds of things that to me was just allow me one more thing that really put the cherry on the cake for me is I went to see the grave of the elderly gentleman who had introduced me to Judaism, and he had died about a year ago, and so I went to his grave, and when I'd finished spending some time with him, I went back to my friends who were waiting for me further along in the cemetery. And I passed a corner of the cemetery that is a military corner. And so that town's lost heroes were buried in that corner of the cemetery. So I spent a little bit of time there as well. Of course, I didn't know any of the people who were there, but I just read what was written on their graves. And then I left to join my friends again. And from the corner of my eye, I could see that there were people there who were not there when I came there. And what I saw was 3 young people, about 20 years old, cleaning and tending to the grave of their friend who had died in that war, the war that was going on at that time. And he'd been buried there, and they were sitting around. 20-year-olds tending a grave. How many Western 20-year-olds have such a thing, even in their consciousness, tending graves? Their own friend has died, and they were tending his grave. For me, that said so. In fact, that scene reduced me to tears. It was just so amazing to see 20-year-olds, no nightclubbing, they're at the grave of their friend who's died.
And it's amazing also to see a country that has been at war for the last number of years, and it continues to thrive economically. Thing is resilience. Is resilience built into the DNA of the Jewish people for 3,500 years?
That's a very that's a complicated issue. If I don't know whether Marco wants to jump in here, but I think this it's a very tricky issue, and it's a long discussion. That's what I can say at this point.
I think it's a conversation for another time. I think the word not to skirt the issue, because it's used a lot. This word is used a lot, and obviously it's certainly a very important strand within modern Jewish Israeli identity, because ultimately in the land of Israel, this is where the Jewish people have their natural habitat. And this is where this is the place from where we derive our strength. At the end of the day, this is where Jewish people should be at the end of the day. And this is the wellspring of everything. There cannot be a Jewish people without the land of Israel. And the land of Israel needs the Jewish people. It has only flourished when the Jewish people have inhabited the land. This is when it blossoms in every sense.
And I'm going to move to the final bit, because I know we're running out of time. The final piece, and we may even come back to this again. But we now have a NATO member trying to make threats against Israel, and this is from Turkey, and Erdogan. Making threats and wanting the Ottoman Empire back. Marco, what a lot of Irish people wouldn't have heard this in the news. Believe you me, they wouldn't have heard it.
Yes.
But we're hearing this from senior government minister now in Ankara.
Absolutely. They certainly haven't been hiding it. And I've noticed a very interesting phenomenon throughout the course of the years, namely something to which the Israeli government has paid scant attention, and indeed the press as well. Jihad tourism. Just the other day, I was doing a tour, and there was a group from Turkey. They'd entered via Jordan, because there are no direct flights now. And you see that they're all dressed in typical attire, and they go to a Christian holy place, namely a primarily Christian holy place, the Room of the Last Supper, and they start shouting, Allahu Akbar. So this is a very important testimony, and this speaks a lot about their intentions. Obviously, they are being primed in their own country for something much bigger.
Okay. And Julie, have you any thoughts on this latest developments from Turkey?
Well, firstly, Turkey's been ambivalent at the best of times towards Israel, but under the undercurrents have always been antithetical. They've always wanted to take it over. They always wanted to that Israel would not be there. When it was a very short time after the death of Ataturk, Mustafa Kemal, that Islam re-emerged in Turkey, resurged. My language is going. Resurged in Turkey. It was never gone, and then to make up for lost time, the whole jihad program was moved much further forward. Erdogan's AK party has been an anti-Israel party right from the beginning. They might have been noisy at some places and quiet at other times, but that's what they are. That's the nature of the beast. I think the demise of the Islamic Republic of Iran has created a space for the Muslim Brotherhood to rise to the ascendancy in Middle Eastern mischief making, and Turkey is in the driver's seat of that in that part of the world. So I cannot see anything but trouble from Turkey, and it's one of those great delusions of the Western mind that Turkey has been kept in NATO despite the Soviet Union having ceased to exist. It was, of course, not to recognize that Turkey is a jihadist entity. It was only thought of as a nation state, as Western people tend to think of it as. And so why not? It's a powerful army, keep it inside NATO. It makes NATO stronger. Not seeing just how dangerous it is to have such an entity inside NATO. The NATO attitude towards Sweden and Swedish accession to NATO, how Turkey behaved is pure Islam. It was nothing else. It's not nationalism, and to expect that what's his name, Jens Stoltenberg, was jumping up and down. But we have agreed, and the Turks just ignored him and kept pressing their demands for suppression of the PKK and other elements like that operating in Sweden, and Sweden had to capitulate. So, I mean, another day will come when it will be another piece of blackmail that Turkey can hold over another NATO member or prospective NATO member, or even the United States. Turkey floods Europe with Muslim invaders, so-called refugees, at will, while the European Union pays Turkey billions of dollars to keep them in Turkey. Turkey just floods these people in, and there's nothing that Europe can do about it. This is jihad. And Turkey is building mosques all over Germany, and this is jihad. And so the Western Front is under control, and now there's the Southern Front down to Israel that Turkey needs to try to get some kind of handle on via Syria.
Okay. Any last word on that, Marco?
I think and Julia summed it up very well. And we have plenty of material for our future podcasts.
We surely do.
Just one thing which I think we really need to mention, and which was a long overdue positive step: Israel recognized the Armenian genocide.
Yes, I saw that. Yes,
which of course was committed by Erdogan's ancestors, and I think we need to emphasize this point and dedicate some attention to it in the coming weeks.
It's a powerful,
and we will.
Powerful psychological blow, and it follows also, of course, on the in the wake of Israel, Cyprus, and Greece forming some kind of
Indeed.
That was one in the eye for Turkey as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we come to the end. If you guys stay on after we exit, just for a few minutes. But that brings us to the end of this evening's program. Marco, thank you once again for sharing your perspective from Jerusalem and helping us. But understanding not only what's happening, but how it feels like to live through these events. And to thank you and Julie for your thought-provoking and professional contribution as usual.
Thank you very much.
We're not having her back, by the way, after what the comments we received.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Compliments.
Yeah. Okay. Since 1948, every generation has faced new threats, new alliances, and new uncertainties. Yet Israel has repeatedly demonstrated an extraordinary ability to adapt, defend itself, and build a vibrant society, despite enormous challenges. Whether the latest agreements signal the beginning of a greater regional stability or simply another chapter in an ongoing struggle, only time will tell. Thank you to everyone who has joined us this evening from Ireland and around the world, and who commented here. And if you've enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, to leave a comment and share this episode with others who value informed, respectful debate. And until next Sunday at 7 p.m. Irish time, thank you for watching the Green Zone, updates from Jerusalem, conversations with Eugene Doyle. I'll bid you all a good night and take care. Thank you for watching and listening. Take care. Bye-bye.